The True Crime Society podcast contains adult themes and violence and is not intended for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
If you'd like to skip the intro, please refer to the timestamp listed in the episode description. Thank you.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the True Crime Society podcast with Stephanie and Olivia. It is April 18th, 2024, 6:47 p.m. here in New York. The weather, rainy, sad, crappy, but it's beginning nicer, which is good.
Oh, Peep is here screaming. Come on.
How about the weather for you?
It's nice, actually. It is getting cooler. Like this morning, my husband and I were lying in bed and we were both coughing, which I feel like it's just because the weather's like it's so much cooler at night than it is in the day. So anyway, yeah, no, but it's beautiful. Been beautiful and sunny. We have had a little bit of rain, but generally beautiful, sunny, warm, still days. So I am enjoying it, I have to say. It's much easier to dress when it's not stinking hot and not freezing cold, when it's just pleasant. So
that actually reminded me, I was feeling sick like the past 2 weeks at work. I'm sure I have complained, and because we back recorded some episodes, this included, I've been complaining about how work's been crazy because one of my coworkers was on vacation like last week, so I had to cover for them. Now a different coworker's on vacation this week, so I have to cover for them. So I've been doing a lot of extra work the last 2 weeks, and I was feeling crappy a lot of this week, and I was like, why am I feeling so crappy on like one of the weeks where it'd be really great if I didn't, because I'm just so busy. And then it finally dawned on me that it was like getting a little nicer out, so I looked up the allergy like report for where I live, and I think the max is like a 12 on the scale, and every day it was like 10.5 to 11 something, and I was like, oh, okay, that explains it, because I am allergic to grass and pollen and trees and everything. So I started doubling up my allergy medication, and that has helped a little.
I actually am lucky I don't suffer from allergies, but a lot of my friends have said that they have been, they said it's been really, really bad here at the moment too. So
I just get like, my throat gets so, I don't really get watery eyes as much or anything, but my contacts do bother me a lot, so I guess maybe that could be why. And my throat gets really scratchy, and I get a gross cough. But I don't get super duper congested, but just feel kind of like I have a light cold more so all the time.
There has been a lot of sickness going around here. Both my kids have been sick. I don't know if it's just the change of seasons, but they do like, this is probably not very interesting, but I find it interesting. That every week the state here releases a respiratory update, and basically they say stuff.
It's giving pandemic.
Well, it is, but they've included things like the flu and RSV and all that. So they don't just report on COVID, but they did say this week COVID levels are low, but RSV levels are high. So, and I've actually known a whole bunch of kids who had pneumonia. It's got a really long name. I looked it up. It's like basically community-acquired pneumonia where it spreads through droplets and stuff like that. So there has been a lot of sickness. Both my kids have been sick, but thankfully it seems to have been pretty quick, and I'm hoping that's it, because we're going on vacation in a few days now, so everyone needs to be well, no more sickness.
Oh my God, it always works out that way.
I know. Hopefully, because we are going somewhere. We're going to Hawaii, so it's going to be warmer. So I'm like, get out in the fresh air and the sun. It'll be amazing. That'll cure everyone.
If you're going to have like a cold or a little virus, might as well have it in Hawaii.
Yeah, might as well.
Better to not.
The only thing is, because we will all be in we've got a very small apartment to stay in. So I'm like, oh my gosh, if everyone's coughing, it's going to be a nightmare. But anyway, it'll be fun.
Yeah. You got something to say? Okay. I was actually just joking with Olivia because we were recording something else before this, and Peep was here causing a ruckus, being annoying. And then as soon as we started to record for the regular episode, she left. But as you can hear, she just made her appearance again. I think it came out. I don't know. I don't know when we recorded what, but I said how Peep
it's all a blur.
Likes to always go and lay in front of the heater that I put on sometimes in the living room. So I made sure, and look, she's leaving now. I made sure to shut it off so that she wouldn't stay in there the whole time and would be forced to come and record with us. She's been such a diva lately. Anyways, speaking about vacations, I think we all know that one of my favorite niche subjects is true crime. that happens on vacation. And we always get asked for podcast recommendations, and we've been loving The Last Trip. This one is hosted by Jamie Beebe, the amazing co-host behind the popular Strictly Stalking. You can listen to The Last Trip now on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and all major podcast platforms via Audioboom. This groundbreaking podcast dives into the chilling investigations of missing and murdered individuals who are living their best lives while on vacation. And this is something that we always talk about. People are much more careless and overindulgent when they're on vacation, which usually leads to some crazy stories. So, Jamie's passions are true crime and travel. The Last Trip offers a unique perspective shaped by her solo travels across the globe, providing valuable insights on staying safe in paradise.
So I know that I've spoken over on Patreon about how I've been looking for a new true crime podcast, and I've been loving this one. I've been listening to an episode about Sister Eileen Christie, which is set in Austria. And the episode's about the American nun who is Sister Eileen, and she vanished without a trace while she was on vacation in Austria. Jamie navigates through police theories and investigates whether foul play might be at the heart of this unsolved mystery. So, to join the group in investigations and discussions, follow The Last Trip on your preferred podcast platforms such as Apple and Spotify, or you can join the conversation with Jamie on Patreon. Don't miss out on riveting stories and exclusive content with The Last Trip. Make sure you subscribe today.
So to get right back into the updates, we have a few updates today. This one I'm just going to talk about super briefly because we don't have any notes written for it. I literally just got the TMZ alert about it on my phone while we were recording. So bear with me if it sounds like I've never read this before in my life, because that it is the case. But it came out recently that, yes, we're going to be talking about Gypsy Rose again for literally just 3 minutes. I don't know. I mean, I guess I haven't checked the comments either, but I don't think we've gotten that much hate about it. Like,
No,
people want to know.
And we do the timestamp, so if you don't listen,
whatever.
just skip on.
So apparently one of the reasons Gypsy is saying, or that is out there, that she divorced her husband, Ryan Anderson, was because of his food hoarding and that he snores a lot and that he sleeps very hot. So I just got a news alert saying, like, what was, like, the food that was being thrown away? What's the drama? It says she threw away more than a couple items from his fridge. She was chucking entire cartons of food, new and old. I guess she was saying that, like, he hoards expired food, and then she tried to throw out the expired food, and they got into a massive fight about it. So it says, sources with direct knowledge tell TMZ Gypsy and her estranged husband would dine out a lot during their marriage, but Ryan rarely ate all of his food, and he would take a lot of it home. We're told him constantly bringing home doggy bags and to-go boxes of chow came to a head at one point before they split, resulting in their fridge getting packed with a ton of containers. Our sources tell us the couple had also been filming season 2 of Gypsy's Lifetime show, where they would get meals provided by production. So those meals would also go in the fridge. Safe to say, this got on Gypsy's nerves after a while. It says we're told Gypsy started feeling very triggered. Talks a little bit about her, like, the food control and stuff that she went through with her mom. So it said, in order to cope with the stress, we're told Gypsy decided to clear out the fridge one day, which blew up into drama with her ex. Since Gypsy didn't know what was new or old, as nothing was labeled, we're told she just ended up throwing out everything. Ryan accused Gypsy of throwing away food he was planning to eat and take to work, per our sources. And as we previously reported, this escalated into a very heated argument. So that's really all it says, actually, but I just thought it was pretty silly because they're just, like, reasons that, if you waited to get married and maybe lived with each other first, those are things you'd probably realize about someone, that they were lazy about throwing away food and leaving the fridge too full, and that they snored a lot when they slept, and that you didn't like that, or they ran very hot when they slept. But also, what are you going to do if someone snores? I luckily don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, neither do I, thankfully.
Yeah, so just another silly twist in the story of Gypsy.
So crazy. I feel like it has slowed down a little bit, the Gypsy roller coaster, but no, it's
Oh, and he
still
posted that
never-ending.
picture you sent today, which is just
It's
like,
just like a new pic. I think it was the caption. It's just him, like, kind of a top half selfie.
yeah, but, like, it's like not smiling or anything. He's just, like, there. And it just says new pic as the caption. Also, how embarrassing. Like, Gypsy just roasted him.
Yeah, it's just it's so crazy.
Yeah. And the next ridiculous update we have quickly is Bryan Kohberger, we know him from the Moscow murders. We were finally graced with a little bit more detail of his alibi that night. If you want to get into that.
Yeah, so this week that he was or he and his defense team were given kind of the deadline of providing the alibi if they wanted it to be used in, I guess, court proceedings that are upcoming. So the document is 2 pages. It's probably essentially about 5 paragraphs long once you take away all the
Nonsense
legal,
fluff.
yeah. And I'll just pick out some of the most interesting bits for want of a better word. But it says Mr. Kohberger moved to Pullman, Washington in June of 2022. As an avid runner and hiker, he explored many areas. And then basically it goes on to talk about the areas that he liked to hike in, which I don't really understand why, because then it goes on to say that he got busy with classes and work and his hiking and running decreased but did not stop. Instead, his nighttime drives increased. This is supported by evidence from Bryan's phone showing him in the countryside late at night or in the early morning. And so it goes on, but basically in his phone, there's all these photos of him taking photos of the night sky in November of 2022. It says Mr. Kohberger was out driving in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, as he often did to hike and run and or see the moon and stars.
Of course.
He drove throughout the area south of Pullman, Washington, west of Moscow, Idaho. And then it goes on that their partial corroboration of this alibi is that he intends to offer testimony from an expert. This person's an expert in cell tower, cell phone, and other radio frequency, and they've attached his CV, which I actually haven't seen yet. But anyway, that's what this person is an expert in, to show that Bryan's mobile device was south of Pullman, Washington and west of Moscow, and that his mobile device did not travel east on the Moscow-Pullman highway in the early morning hours. And basically this means that his car was not the one captured on CCTV around the time of the murders. And then it goes, additional information as to his whereabouts will be provided once the state provides the discovery requested and now subject to an upcoming motion to compel. So that's the extent of his alibi. Once we read it yesterday, we posted and asked everyone what they thought about it. One thing Kelly, who is in our true crime admin group, did find was the weather that day. I'm just pulling it up now.
It was ice frost. Ice fog.
Ice fog and a temperature of 28. So great weather for stargazing and moon gazing.
And specifically around 2, 3 a.m. and said it was overcast.
Yeah.
And then you found that information about the park.
Well, I wasn't going to look. So I was reading about it and basically it said, I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Wawawa Park? I probably have that wrong. Anyway, the document mentions that Wawawa, he went to this park a few times during the morning hours. So they were murdered around 3:30 a.m., 4 a.m. I'm just trying to remember off the top of my head. But anyway, it was around that time in the morning. But I did find a document online about this park. And so he alleges he was driving around and he went to the park. According to the park website, this is a gated park with no access into or out of the park from dusk until 7 a.m. So I did read, I was reading comments about that and people there are other ways he could have gotten into the park. But either way, he's admitted trespassing because the park is closed. Mm-hmm. At that time, there isn't meant to be anyone in there, or the park is gated depending on which entry he used. So just it seems like they've had all this time to come up with this alibi and it's just ridiculous.
And it's still not very concrete, factual, can be proven. But so people are already arguing about this. For some reason, Bryan Kohberger has a lot of supporters. I think it's mainly just people who like to be trolls and angsty online, but whatever.
Yeah.
So I went back and just skimmed through the probable cause affidavit that was why he was arrested and all that, because the questions come up about where his phone was his phone off, blah, blah, blah. So to jog our memories, the way that they found Bryan Kohberger was because they were checking cameras in the area of the house and they were finding this white Elantra. They kept seeing it. They kind of tracked it around and did all that. They
remember he did I forgot he did the 3-point turn in the
turn.
driveway.
Yeah.
Not in the street, maybe not in the driveway, but right near the house.
Yeah, right near it. He's turning around trying to find parking. So then they track that car back to Pullman, Washington, seeing it on the interstates. So they put the word out to the police. They're looking for this car. It's like a Hyundai Elantra. They couldn't see the plates, but I think it was missing a front license plate. So they end up finding Bryan Kohberger just from that and looking into him more. And then they pulled his phone, like historical data. But this is what people are arguing about, is they checked the cell towers that are around the house, and his phone does not come up as being there during the time of the murders, but his phone stopped pinging between
Transmitting.
like 2 something a.m. and 4 something a.m. So this is an excerpt from the affidavit, just to jog our memories again, because I'm sure everyone like me has not revisited this for a bit since we're waiting 8,000 years for this trial. It says on November 13th, 2022, at approximately 2:42 a.m., the phone was utilizing cellular resources that provide coverage to whatever road in Pullman, Washington, which is the Kohberger residence. At approximately 2:47 a.m., the phone utilized cellular resources, providing coverage southeast of the Kohberger. So it basically just goes through saying how, like, the phone was following the path that the Elantra that they saw on CCTV was taking. So it's like pinging along with the car. But then at approximately 2:47 a.m., the phone stops reporting to the network, which is consistent with either the phone being in an area without cellular coverage, the connection to the network is disabled, such as putting it in airplane mode, or that the phone is turned off. The phone does not report to the network again until approximately 4:48 a.m., at which time it utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to this way, and it starts naming the roads again, basically going back to Pullman, Washington. So, like, if this isn't Bryan Kohberger, it's like a really big fucking coincidence.
And one thing too, just for as a refresher, because as you said, it's been a million years, that Bryan is or was a student in criminology. So he likely knew that his phone would be tracked, at all. It is absolutely screams to me that this person was intending to do something, and that's why the phone was turned off. And one other thing that I've found interesting about this alibi is a lot of people have said they think Bryan is actually the one who wrote the information in the document as opposed to his defense team. They get like, it just screams of something that he would write about the moon and the stars and
Because
hiking,
he's like a snob.
decreasing. Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people have theorized that this is kind of an experiment to him to see if he can kind of beat the system, murder these people and then beat the system because he knows so much about criminology and, being a criminal and all that. So like that
What an
is kind of,
insufferable narcissist, if
I
that's
know.
true.
So, but it's just like the thing is, I feel like I could possibly see that because what kind of
Same.
lawyer would write something like that as the alibi? Whereas I could just see it, he would be, nope, this is what we're saying, this is what we've got to say. And anyway, it's an interesting discussion that's been had
Could you imagine
about that.
being his attorney? I feel like if that's the case, like every meeting you guys have to, like, he comes in with like a PowerPoint and he's like, all right, new idea. We're going to say
How
that
about we go this angle?
yeah, I really love the moon and the stars. I have some pictures on my phone from last year to prove that I really like the moon and the stars. So that's what I was doing.
And do you know what? It's shitty and we shouldn't be laughing because it's actually a very serious crime, but it's just the laughability of the defense and what they're seemingly going to try and say. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is an absolute circus. And everyone's like, so we've waited 18 months and this is the alibi. And even the document is so underwhelming. It's literally a few paragraphs and you're like, okay, that's it. So this is what they're going to base. And I know they've said they will give more information once they get more information. But the whole thing is just
Oh, and
laughable.
that reminds me, Kaylee's family put out a statement about this already because they made the good point. Well, I'll just read it first because it makes a good point. So her family put out a statement saying, we've been waiting on this information for months and it's finally arrived. It is so hard not knowing anything about the case, and you find you have to cling to dates, motions, and hearings in order to figure anything out. A big part of this has been waiting on the alibi information. Now that it's here, we feel even more confident in the prosecution of the defendant. The defense's claim is that the defendant was driving late at night, hiking, running, and stargazing. We're not sure why it has taken over a year for this to come out, as those don't seem to be complicated activities. We believe that if this alibi had any weight, it would have been submitted months ago. It's also in direct conflict with the probable cause affidavit that states the defendant's phone was turned off between 2:47 and 4:48 a.m. So if the defendant was driving around and there's cell phone information that he was in a different place, it would be either before or after the times of the murders. Hence, not really an alibi. We continue to look forward to justice in this case and can now put this part of the proceeding behind us. Thanks for all of your support for our family. Some people argued, like, well, they never said the phone was off, but as I read it from the probable cause, it says that it was out of service during those times, which also
Hmm.
makes me wonder, maybe this is him trying to be tricky, like you were saying. What if his phone was in airplane mode or something? Could he still take pictures during that
Yeah.
time? Because he could walk right out of that house, snap some pics of the moon, and if it's in airplane mode, it's not. Is it going to have the data, the location data, anything like that?
I feel like if they had, I'm just going back to just read the actual, maybe I was just going to say, because I feel like it doesn't actually say they had it that night. Like it just says there was photos from November on his phone. So it doesn't actually, I'm just going to double check just so we can, no, yeah. So it doesn't say he has photos from that day, but it says the phone data includes numerous photographs taken on several different late evenings and early mornings, including in November. So it doesn't say, like, I feel like if they absolutely had something from November 13, they would say it, but it just says
And
including November. So
I feel like the neighbors. I don't know when this came out, or because my sister knows someone whose parents are like the neighbors of Bryan Kohberger's parents, where he was staying. I don't know if I heard this from them or in the news or whatever, but they did say that he like going out for runs like super super early in the morning, like
yeah.
like before 5 a.m. early. So I mean, it is something he did, and maybe that's when he took these pictures. But
It's just so weird to me. Like, I just don't know. Like, he used to like hiking, but then he got really busy, so he just started going for drives instead. Like, he was, I don't know. Maybe like, why would he eat? You know, like you said, if he did run early in the morning, why couldn't he still do that? Like, I just feel like it's such a weird, random excuse for why he like, just say he liked to go for drives. Doesn't matter about his hiking decreasing or his. Oh
we
no,
don't need
it's
to know
just.
that he liked the moon.
Oh, the whole thing's crazy.
Yeah, and just again, to repeat what you said, I know it's not funny, it's a horrible crime, then I
Yeah.
feel terrible for these families for having to go through. That's why it's like so annoying and laughable, because it's so fucking ridiculous that this is what these poor families are going through, and this is dragging on and on and on, because they're like, all right, let's wait 8 months to a year, and now we're just gonna be like, he liked to look at the moon and the stars, and that's what he was doing. Like, you literally drag this on for that.
When I saw the doc, because someone posted the documents in our Facebook group, and when they posted it, I was like waiting for them to post the rest, and then there's nothing else. And I'm like, is that it?
Yeah,
And they're like, yeah. I'm like, oh.
it was literally nothing. So that's the latest with that.
Yeah. So before we get into the episode, we're going to hear a word from our sponsor, IQ Bar. I like having a coffee in the morning, but sometimes they make me jittery. And afterwards, I think, why did I do that? I feel anxious. I'm like, what is going on? And that's why I really love to start my day lately with an IQ Joe. The magnesium in IQ Joe smooths everything out and I get zero jitters, which really sets me up to have a great day. So start your day right with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars, hydration mixes, and mushroom coffees. The ultimate sampler pack includes all three. You get 7 IQ Bar flavors, 4 IQ Mix flavors, and 4 IQ Joe flavors. And today our listeners get an exclusive offer of 20% off plus free shipping. Just text CRIME to 64,000. My favorite IQ Joe flavor at the moment is vanilla spice. It's so delicious and such a great way to start your day.
IQ Joe is a jitter-free instant coffee packed with 200 milligrams of natural caffeine, brain-boosting magnesium, and productivity-enhancing lion's mane. IQ Joe comes in 4 delicious flavors: original black, vanilla spice, cafe mocha, and toasted hazelnut that taste better than any brewed coffee. All IQ Bar products are entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners, and IQ Bar makes the #1 brain and body nutrition bar, hydration mix, and instant coffee in the US with over 10,000 5-star reviews and counting. So refill smarter with IQ Bar's ultimate sampler pack. That's 7 IQ bars, 4 IQ mix sticks, and 4 IQ Joe sticks. And now our special podcast listeners get 20% off all IQ Bar products, plus get free shipping. To get your 20% off, just text CRIME to 64,000. Get your discount. Text CRIME to 64,000. That's CRIME, CRIME, to 64,000. Message and data rates may apply. See terms for details. Okay, so we're going to get into the rest of the episode now, but just a reminder, we are skipping 1 week, so next week there won't be a regular episode. Olivia's going to be away, so we're taking a week off. It'll help me with doing all the house stuff and chores. We've been very busy lately, so just one little quick break, but if you feel like you're going to miss us so much and you don't have any episodes to listen to, check out our Patreon, because like I said, we do bonus episodes every week. They're pretty long, and we've been doing them at least since like September last year, so there would be plenty to listen to. You get access to all the back catalog of all the bonus episodes we've done, and you get every other episode ad-free and a little bit earlier.
I feel like too, our Patreon is very good value. Like I know a lot of them go up to $50 or $100 a month.
I know, that's crazy to me.
Ours is $1 a week.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like $4 a month.
Yeah.
It gives you the option to do the whole year, which comes out to less than $50. So again, if you want to support us directly or if you want more content, it is a great thing to check out.
And if you do sign up for
otherwise,
a year,
see you in 2 weeks.
If you do sign up for a year, you get a discount. I don't know, I think it's like 10% or something. So
it's 10%.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I feel like that is great value, $1 for an extra hour of entertainment pretty much, and no ads. So good value.
We think so anyways. We're probably biased, but okay, so into the topic of the episode, we're going to be talking about, this episode was sent to us a lot. People wanted to hear about it. I think it like made its rounds on TikTok, which is why it became relevant again.
There's a YouTube documentary on it, I think, as well, that is fairly recent, which is why everyone, and it is crazy. It's one of those ones, and I actually hadn't heard about it till a few people sent it to us relatively recently. I feel like because it happened in COVID times, so maybe other things were going on, but yeah, it's one of those cases that is just unbelievable.
Yeah. So this is the case of Colorado teen Bryan Kohberger, and in February 2021, he brutally murdered a homeless man, 69-year-old Warren Barnes, who was actually like a beloved homeless man by the community. He like helped them all out a lot, and they all knew him, and everyone really seemed to like him. Bryan thought he was just gonna kill a homeless guy that no one cared about, so no one would ever know. And Bryan has suffered from a lot of mental issues, and he was very fixated on just wanting to kill someone. That was what he wanted to do. So it was very like brazen, cold, terrible, for no reason.
Just to add before you go on to, this is like a double Bryan episode. I know we always joke that it's always Bryan. Bryan Laundrie, Bryan Walsh, Bryan Cohee, Bryan Kohberger. There's so many. Always a Bryan.
But then to combat the bad Bryans is Bryan Enton doing all the reporting on the bad Bryans.
True.
Newly laid flowers now blow in the wind, along with books and litter at the site where Warren Barnes was brutally murdered, decapitated, dismembered, and mutilated February 27th, 2021. After living a nightmare for nearly 2 years in pain and anguish, Bryan Kohee Jr.'s many victims will suffer in silence no more. On the 15th day of the People v. Cohee, victims confronted the murderer face-to-face in Courtroom 11 at the Mesa County Justice Center, sharing the tragic, lifelong impact of Cohee's horrific actions. More than a dozen of Warren's family and friends spoke, including his sister Geraldine, who Warren called on her birthday, February 26, just 1 day before his murder. One of Warren's nieces said Cohee hurt his own family, plus hurt everyone with ADHD and autism spectrum disorder, and will burden every taxpayer in Colorado throughout his life in prison. One of Barton's cousins said Warren had a thirst for knowledge and reading. She said Cohee's diabolical drive to become a famous serial killer in the end, ironically, brought her fragmented family together. Another family member told the court being homeless doesn't make a person's life less valuable. She reminded them Warren was not a throwaway person. Finally, the friend who took the picture of Warren seen by so many said the hardworking man who was so giving and loved birds will never again repeat the phrase, "And you also," after she told him good morning. Barnes' family and friends aren't the only victims. Nearly every person sharing their impact statement also expressed sympathy for Cohee's family, especially Terri Cohee, the defendant's mother.
I continue to live in a place of darkness and sadness, and that my own pain doesn't compare to your loss. I want you to know how sorry I am.
She ended her statement begging the court to show Bryan mercy and asking for better mental health care, saying the odds were stacked against Bryan from the start.
Bryan Kohee, he was 19 years old at the time this happened. Not sure if I said that. So this happened in Grand Junction, Colorado, and a little bit of background on Warren Barnes, the man who was killed. Warren was known around downtown Grand Junction as, quote, the reading man, because he so often sat behind a bridal shop, absorbed in paperbacks when he wasn't helping store owners move boxes or doing odd jobs through a temporary agency. Monique Lanati, who owns the bridal shop, said he was valued, he was loved, he's missed every single day. Geraldine Shipp, one of Warren's 8 siblings, said that she still has nightmares about the way her brother was brutally murdered a day after he phoned her to wish her a happy birthday. She said he was a man of honor, man of integrity, a man loved by the community and by family. So as for Bryan, the killer, his parents are Bryan Sr. and his mother is Terri. The younger Bryan is known as Bryan Kohee II. Sometimes we'll say Bryan II, just to clarify the Bryans.
Yeah, because the dad does feature a little bit, but yeah, if we need to clarify, that's why.
Yeah. So Bryan II, killer, was said to have a troubled past, suffered from mental disorders, and was interested in death and morbidity. Bryan was diagnosed with a major depressive disorder and Asperger's syndrome at some point in his life. So on February 27th, 2021, Bryan and his parents had a family movie night. Bryan, should I just say Bryan Jr.?
Call him Bryan Jr. if you want, whatever.
Okay. I'm switching to Bryan Jr. because it's easier than Bryan II. So Bryan Jr. picked the film 1984 for them to all watch. So some info about the movie if you don't know it. A man loses his identity while living under a repressive regime. In a story based on George Orwell's classic novel, Winston Smith is a government employee whose job involves the rewriting of history in a manner that casts his fictional country's leaders in a charitable light. His relationship with Julia provide his only measure of enjoyment, but lawmakers frown upon the relationship, and in this closely monitored society, there is no escape from Big Brother. So a book a lot of people read in high school. The movie ended around 10 p.m., and Bryan and his parents went their separate ways. Bryan left his home and went out into Grand Junction, and he saw Warren sleeping under a canvas near the Grand Avenue footbridge near Crosby Avenue. So Bryan had taken a large kitchen knife from his home, and arrest papers show that Bryan stabbed Warren and decapitated him, placing some of his remains in a large plastic bag. It's believed that Bryan picked Warren to be his victim totally randomly. Like, there was no purpose. He just, besides wanting to maybe just find a homeless person or a prostitute, which he mentions, there's really no reason for Warren or if they ever interacted or anything like that. So, as I was just saying, Bryan would later tell investigators that he had wanted to kill a person for a while. He said he would routinely drive around at night looking for homeless camps. He told police that he'd been planning to kill a homeless person or a prostitute because they wouldn't be missed and wouldn't draw as much attention. Well, he picked the wrong homeless man who is beloved by everyone. He later explained, he said, police, they don't seem to care as much about high-risk individuals, homeless people, prostitutes, etc. So I was deliberately looking for someone who lived that type of life. Bryan was wearing a blue jumpsuit, a mask, and gloves at the time of the murder. He drove some of Warren's remains back to his home and stashed the body in his bedroom closet. After doing so, he allegedly traveled back to the crime scene and loaded up other remains into the trunk of his car and went to dispose of those parts in the river at a local boat ramp. So court papers show that while he was unloading the remains at the boat ramp, karma struck him and his car became stuck and partially submerged in the river. Like, what a dumbass.
Yeah.
Bryan called some acquaintances for help and his car had to be towed out. Like, that's almost worse than making a 3-point turn in front of the house that you're gonna go murder people at.
But again, like Bryan Kohberger, he did get away with it for a little bit longer after that. But yeah,
ridiculous.
A wild scenario.
I would just be like, well, lose the car at this point before calling for help after murdering and dumping remains. Like,
it's so ballsy to just be like, hey, come and help me. I've, like when you know that you've literally just dumped their remains in the river.
Yeah, I'd be
come and help
pushing
me.
the whole car in the river then.
Yeah.
After Bryan returned home the following day, his father said he became suspicious when he noticed some blood on the trunk of the vehicle. Bryan Jr. explained the blood by saying that he had cut his finger. Later, Bryan's father found Warren's wallet in the vehicle and a knife in the glove box and some white latex gloves, and his father said that the knife was clean at that time. Before we get into the episode, we have a quick word from our sponsor, Quince. The weather is getting warmer, and as you know, me and Olivia, we love warm weather. We are so excited.
Love talking about the weather.
We love talking about the weather. It's one of our favorite subjects. And, with spring and summer coming, I wanted to update my wardrobe for the long haul without spending a fortune. And luckily, I found Quince. I've got a lineup of timeless pieces that keep me looking effortlessly chic year after year. I just got the Mongolian cashmere crew neck sweater in black, and it's perfect because it's really lightweight for when it's warm out and the weather's kind of crazy, where then in the afternoon it gets cooler and at night it's even chillier. So you feel like you need to wear all these layers, but with the Mongolian cashmere sweater, it can cover all the temps.
And the best part is all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes, and we love that. Get warm weather ready with Quince. Go to quince.com/TCS for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/TCS to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/TCS.
So on March 1st, 2021, Bryan's parents called police after they found Warren's dismembered head and hands in Bryan Jr.'s closet. I think this is one of the clips, these are some of the clips that got a lot of attention in this case being shared online. It just feels horrible for his mom and them.
One other
during
thing
these.
that I've read too is that his mother actually ran a family daycare from their house. So there was all these
Ugh.
kids, in the house or around the house at the
Oh
time
my
that
gosh.
this was all found.
That's scary. So this is the 911 call.
911 is John. What's the address emergency?
Hi, there is an emergency. I found something in my son's closet wrapped in a plastic bag.
Okay, what was it?
I think it's a human head.
It's a what?
I think it's a human head.
Why do you think it's that?
Because it looks like it's all an ear.
Is it bloody or does it like anything like that?
Can you just come? Do I have to take a picture and send it to you?
What's
Can you
the
just
address?
come?
Is your son there now?
He just pulled up. We wanted to make sure he was here before we called.
How old is he?
19. He's had a little bit of a fascination with the morbid, but he was channeling it, I thought, into becoming a crime scene investigator, but not so much.
Do you think he's going to be cooperative with us?
I don't know. I don't think he'll be violent.
Okay.
Just came back from his friend's house.
Does he have any weapons in his room, or do you guys have any in the house?
I don't know. I think that he has a shotgun, but we can certainly remove it immediately before he gets in his room. He's out by the car now, so.
Is the bag still in the closet?
No, it's in my kitchen sink. And there's a secondary bag that I have not opened. It's currently covered with a towel.
And there's a second bag?
There's a second bag, though. I don't know what's in it. I didn't open it.
I'm sorry. Did he take the second bag out of the closet?
I took the second bag out of the closet and put it in the sink.
Where's Bryan now?
I think he's still outside.
And you're in the backyard now?
I am, yes, because I don't want him to hear me.
And this is some of the footage of Bryan's mother talking about finding the remains.
What in the world does he have in here? And I picked it up, and it was heavy. And I held it in my hands, and I was like, what in the world is this? What in the world? Is it like maggots covering something? Or I don't know. I better take it in the sink. So I carried it out to the sink, and it was double bagged. So I ripped open one bag, and I saw gold blood. Okay. And I went, I ripped open the second bag, and it saw his head. Okay. I saw his earring. didn't open the second bag.
So just to quote some of what she said, I was in his room cleaning up, putting some things away, and he has a Rubbermaid container in his closet, and so I kind of just started digging through. I saw a plastic bag, and I was like, what in the world does he have in here? I picked it up, and it was heavy. I held it in my hands, maggots covering something. Could you, imagine just going in your kid's room and be like, what is he up to? What is this nonsense? And then it's human remains. She said, I carried it out to the sink. It was double bagged. She said she didn't open the second bag after the first layer and immediately called her husband. Bryan Jr., he was at the home of a female friend. Police arrived to interview him, and there's some infamous footage of Bryan talking to police.
Parents have some concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room?
Yeah, I believe so.
And what would it be?
A human head and hands.
Just to quote some of it, the officer asked, your parents have concerns of some stuff they may have found in your room. What would it be? And Bryan calmly responds, a human head and hands. From that fellow that went missing recently. And the officer asked, how'd you end up with him? And Bryan said, I murdered him. When asked, with what, Bryan replied, a knife. When officers asked why Bryan had murdered Warren, he said, I always wondered what murder would feel like.
This clip from the police body cam footage shows officers talking to his parents and going into the house to confirm the contents in the sink.
I'm going to have you walk over here. You're going to sit in the back of my partner's patrol car for a minute, okay? Not yet. Okay. Just sit back there and hang out for me, okay? Can you walk me inside, please?
Let's walk you all through this, what happened in the very beginning.
Okay.
Let me do it. You go inside.
Well, let's stay out here with me for a minute.
Sit down. Come on, sit down, baby.
Can I go in there and verify here first?
Oh, yeah, please. We haven't seen it. Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
looked at it. It's under the towel in the sink.
Okay.
Yeah, Annie, stay with your mother. Give her a...
Just make sure that guy goes in the car first.
I can stay here. You can go in the sink, right?
Well,
The sink's
okay.
right there. No, anything.
Yeah.
House is empty.
Okay.
We had a bag feeling about what happened this weekend.
Okay.
And she said there's a bag in this closet, and she opened it up. And she called me and said, get over here right now. I covered it with a towel.
Okay.
So I didn't want him to see it because we didn't want him to run. I don't want to look at it.
Yep.
Bryan was taken in for questioning. He told police more about the murder. He said, it was the night of February 27th. It was a full moon. Another Bryan who loves murder in the moon. It was a full moon, and I figured I could see so well, why not try it out? I'm in a bad state of mind at the time. I have major depressive disorder. I was driving along, and I see a shape here on the railway track, so I'm like, oh, interesting. I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife. I put on 3 layers of gloves because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck. He was panicking at first, and he was saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why? And I just kept stabbing his neck.
So sad.
Just like the confidence and like he's just telling what he did on a random Friday night to his friends. Bryan told police that he was growling and making animalistic noises while stabbing Warren.
Under the overpass, and I was driving along, and I see a shape here on the railway tracks. So I'm like, oh, interesting. So I go up, and as I'm looking, I see a large thing wrapped in a canvas.
Okay.
And I'm like, that's a homeless person. So I grab my knife, I put on 3 layers of gloves because plastic gloves can betray their users because they're so thin, the final gloves, by printing your fingerprints through. So I put on 2, 3 on one hand. I took the knife, I pulled back the canvas, and I stabbed his neck. Okay. He was panicking at first in his old man voice. He was in his 50s. I know why I call him old man. He was saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why? Ah! And I just kept on stabbing his neck. Is it okay if I do a demonstration? Oh, yeah. This is him. I was straddled on top of him like this. Okay. And he couldn't fight back. It was actually surprisingly easy. I was barely breaking a sweat. I thought, oh, this guy, he's going to be tough. But no, it was actually surprisingly easy. And during the time, I was growling and making animalistic noises.
Bryan laughed at one point in the investigation as he described dismembering Warren. He then said, "Sorry, that's morbid," to investigators. "I've been wanting to do this for a long fucking time," he told police.
So Bryan was charged with first-degree murder, 2 counts of tampering with a deceased human body and physical evidence. Straight after his arrest, his defense team filed a motion to move the case from the criminal court to the juvenile court, but I don't know why, because he was 19. But anyway, according to the district attorney Dan Rubenstein, the juvenile court does not have jurisdiction over crimes after the defendant has turned 18, which makes sense to me. In September 2021, there was a hearing in the case. Officer Thomas Stuckenschneider spoke in court at that time, and he testified that he found part of Warren's remains wrapped in plastic bags and towels when he searched the Cohee home. The officer also mentioned that when he searched the house, he found a blue jumpsuit in the dryer, and that's what the investigators believe Bryan wore on the night of the murders. He noted that the blue jumpsuit might have been washed, but that wasn't confirmed. So Bryan went to trial in January 2023. The trial ran for 12 days. Bryan's defense team tried to say that he'd been insane at the time of the murder and he pleaded not guilty. In Colorado, to be found not legally sane at the time of the crime, a person must be found incapable of distinguishing right from wrong at the time a crime is committed because of a mental disease or defect. At the trial, Dr. Craig Gustafson testified that he had treated Bryan for depression since 2018. He said that in 2020, Bryan said he was suffering from frequent headaches, and the doctor ordered a CAT scan to check for any abnormalities, but none were found. Dr. Gustafson also said that he treated Bryan for a medical condition just days before Warren's murder, and he said that Bryan was, quote, definitely not psychotic at that time. A counsellor named B. Phillips met with Bryan 24 times. The counsellor said that Bryan referred to trans individuals as it. She also said that Bryan spoke repeatedly about Darwinism and survival of the fittest. Bryan reportedly asked her, "Why is it such a big deal to hurt or steal from others? It is what we are supposed to do." The counsellor also spoke of a time where Bryan bullied a female on purpose, purposely to trigger her PTSD. And the counsellor said she believed that Bryan definitely knew right from wrong. We also learned during the trial that Terri, his mother, had taken Bryan to the Division of Vocational Rehab for an assessment in 2019. Terri said that Bryan was unable to recognize how his choices affected those around him. At that point, Bryan was diagnosed by a Dr. Caton with the lowest level of autism, and that meant he apparently needed the least amount of support or assistance. When Dr. Caton asked Bryan about his aspirations and goals, she said that he idolized Hitler, the Columbine killers, Ted Bundy, and Stalin. Dr. Caton then recommended that he receive immediate treatment. At the time of the murder, or around the time of the murder, Bryan had worked at a Safeway store. Summer Clemens, who's a co-worker of his, testified and said that he became more talkative in the months leading up to the murder. Bryan told Summer that he didn't have any real friends, and she kind of replied, "We're your friends." But then he said she was only doing it out of pity. The friend who had been with Bryan at the time he was arrested also testified. She told the court that they were each other's closest friend. She said that she could tell when Bryan was sad and they discussed their mental health issues. And the girl's mother spoke in court about how Bryan had left their home dramatically after he got the call from Terri about the remains being found in his closet. Forensic psychologist Dr. Serrano Amerigo testified about Bryan's state of mind during questioning. She said that not only did Bryan know where he was, what he was doing, and why he was being interviewed, but he showed no signs of psychosis at any point before, during, or after the crime. She also stated that Bryan had no issues answering questions and showed no signs of distress. The jury had additional questions for this doctor. One juror asked, "Can someone have homicidal thoughts and paranoia and still be sane?" And the doctor replied, "Yes." Another question was, "Based on your evaluation, are you able to say if Bryan was oriented when he went back to get Warren's body?" And her response was, "He was not experiencing any signs of psychosis when he went to retrieve the body." At one point in the trial, the defense mentioned that Bryan had said that he felt on edge and that he also said the walls had eyes. The prosecution asked, "Is there any connection between these suspicions or delusions that is connected to the murder?" And Dr. Serrano responded no. Part of an assessment transcript of Bryan was also shown in court. It read, quote, "For a 2-week period, there was a strong instinct to bite someone's throat and rip it out or bite a shoulder." According to Bryan, these thoughts began around the ages of 15 to 17, but the last time he reports experiencing these impulses was the night he murdered Warren. Bryan said, "When I would see a person, the first thing in my mind, I would see them being shot or stabbed or body parts missing, intrusive thoughts." There was a forensic video analyst, Jordan Hooslig. He testified about Warren's phone history on the night of the murder, which I found this really sad. He found through phone data that Warren made a call to an unknown number around 7. He interacted with the app People Ready Job Stack, and he played a mobile card game of poker. So just, on his phone, playing games, had no idea
Minding
what
his
was
own
about
business.
what was going to happen to him. At the trial, it was also noted on the night of the murder that Bryan had noted down the occasion on his phone and written first in his cell phone notes. So I guess indicating the first murder he's ever committed. The jurors were shown graphic photos of Warren and the murder scene. Several of the jurors were upset and appeared uneasy. One defense attorney objected to what she called a juror's mental state after one juror started to cry and couldn't look at the crime scene photos. The defense requested that they have them dismissed. Judge Richard Gurley overruled the objection, saying it made sense to look away and cry due to the graphic nature of the photos. So Bryan's parents also took the stand. Terri said that Bryan has autism, ADHD, and anxiety, and that he'd been taking medication since he was 5 years old. His mother said that his autism was the reason for his hyperfixations. Terri said that in the months of November and December 2020, she found a black backpack equipped with zip ties, a hammer, duct tape, and pliers. Terri also spoke about Bryan's bright mind. She said that he was interested in astrophysics from a young age until his focus shifted to crime scene investigation.
He really does have a lot in common with Bryan Kohberger, though.
Yeah, he does, actually, when you think about it.
Mm-hmm.
She said that Bryan had a fascination with morbidity, and after watching The Silence of the Lambs, he told her he wanted to be a crime scene investigator. Terri also said that Bryan appeared, quote, lighter than what he had been over the last few months, the day after the murder. She said that she had also found the blood on the trunk of the car and she'd questioned him, but he told her it was theatrical blood. The prosecution interviewed Terri for more than 2 hours, but the defense only interviewed her for 6 minutes. Bryan's father also appeared on the stand. We've gone through already a lot about what he spoke about. He spoke about the movie night and how they watched 1984, and about how Bryan had told him that the blood on the trunk had been from a cut on his finger. So one of the final witnesses in the trial was Dr. Paul Sprague. Dr. Sprague was hired to perform a sanity evaluation on Bryan. Dr. Sprague said that while it might look like Bryan planned the killing, he would call it an inference. He said that Bryan spent so much time researching murder and serial killers that it is more likely that Bryan was indulging his interest to the max rather than plotting a murder. So that seems like it was kind of the defense's, they were trying to make that their big ticket item. In terms
Which,
of
like, it hardly even makes sense to me. Like, I get what they're trying to say, but it's like, no, he was still plotting a murder.
I feel like at this point, it just seems like there was so much evidence. It was just a, token gesture.
Next, they're going to be like, he was just out looking at the moon and the stars.
So the jury deliberated on the case for around 2 days. They returned their verdict on February 3rd, which was a Friday in 2023. Bryan was found guilty of first-degree murder and of tampering with a deceased human body and tampering with evidence. Bryan displayed no emotion as the verdict was read. The district attorney, Trish Mayer, said, Warren Barnes lost his life in the most violent of ways. His friends, family, and community suffer his loss. This outcome demonstrates the checks and balances that exist within the criminal justice system. Justice prevailed when the jury rendered guilty verdicts, holding the defendant legally accountable for his horrendous crimes. So Terri did make a brief statement. That's his mother as she left the courtroom. She said, I would just like to express our family's deep and sincere sympathies to the community and the family of Mr. Barnes. So Bryan was sentenced very quickly on Monday, February 6, 2023, so just after the weekend. Terri spoke that day and she sobbed and shook as she did. She said Bryan was a young man with mental defects who always knew he was not like other people. She said that she continued to live in a place of darkness and sadness, and she ended her statement by begging the court to show Bryan mercy and asking for better mental health care. She said that the odds were stacked against Bryan from the start. More than 30 of Warren's friends and family showed up in court that day. Family members and friends stressed that he counted even though he chose to live outside. They noted that he was never known to beg or to hassle any passerbys, and he had a stock phrase for those who wished him a nice day, and it was, and you also. He shared his daily Subway sandwiches with the birds that would gather around his scuffed boots. His cousin, Joanne Barnes Graham, said he would help anyone who needed it, including the defendant. He was not a throwaway person. Just as a side note, a memorial sculpture was eventually erected where Warren used to sit. It's a metal replica of his chair with a stack of books etched with some of his favorite westerns, and the inscription on one of the back of the books reads, "And you also." It's nice. It's like a bronze sculpture. It's a nice tribute to him.
It brought a tear to my eye when
Yeah.
I first read the notes. I was like, it's so nice, all these people.
Even I got goosebumps when I'm just reading all that. I'm like, he was so loved, and then just to have his life so easily and senselessly taken is just horrific.
Yeah, it's really heartwarming that so many people in the community kind of fought to make sure that he wasn't what Bryan Kohee thought he was, like just a forgettable person that no one cared about, and that they fought to have this memorial and stood up for him, because it seems like he didn't, well, he guessed they'd mentioned that sister, but it seems like it was more so the community that he had and that helped look out for him, and he helped them with random tasks. So it was really nice to see that they made sure that he wasn't just written off as a nobody.
So Judge Richard Gurley said after 37 years of serving different capacities in the court system, including 16 years as a judge, this was one of the most horrific cases he had ever experienced. The judge also stated that it was evident that Bryan suffered from mental problems and viewed things differently, but despite that, murder was on his mind for quite some time. Judge Gurley sentenced Bryan to the rest of his natural life in prison, plus 13 and a half years without parole. So that is a good outcome, I feel, in the case. After we said we were going to record this case today, we had a message from someone on our Instagram, Tanisha. This is just interesting info, which I wanted to include. It says, I saw that you were recording on Bryan, and I wanted to suggest, if you haven't already, to look up the Mesa County Sheriff's Office so you can see how insanely close the overpass where the murder happened and the arms were found is to with the Sheriff's Department and the jail. It literally backs up to the jail. It just makes you realize how brazen he was to commit that crime. So he just did this despite there being police literally next door. He just didn't care.
I wonder if that was like a reason he chose to stay there too. Oh wait, no, is this
where
he dumped it, or where?
No, well, I think that's where. So because Warren was sleeping under the overpass. So yeah, I feel like this is absolutely where the murder happened, and I think he left some of the remains there because remember they said he only took a few. Like I think he took Warren's head and a few other remains in the plastic bag.
Yeah, I was gonna say I wonder if that's why Warren chose to stay there, because it made him feel safer to be near.
Well, I'm assuming
the
shelter of the overpass plus the proximity to the police station would have been a maybe a small comfort to him.
It would seem like a decent spot to feel a little bit safer.
Yeah. She said, I used to take that road all the time. When I heard about the location, I was absolutely shocked. It isn't a desolate, low-traffic spot. It's maybe a 2-minute walk to the sheriff's office front door.
Wow.
So just another crazy aspect to the case.
Yeah, I think Bryan was definitely suffering from severe mental illness. I don't know specifically about what treatment he had or medications or anything, but definitely was suffering from mental illness. But I think, and we've said this in the past with a lot of these cases, while yes, someone could be extremely mentally ill where it's almost like they don't see something wrong with murder, but they still know it's wrong. Like if he didn't think it was wrong, he wouldn't have tried to hide the remains and, hide the remains in his closet and puts the other remains in the river. Like he's hiding the remains to not get caught because he knows it's wrong.
And he also specifically basically told police that he knew it was wrong because he said he picked someone who wouldn't be missed and he knew, or who he thought wouldn't be looked for. Like it's not like he knew. He just wanted to murder someone. He didn't care about the implications and he tried to pick someone who he thought he could get away with murdering.
Yeah, so he definitely wasn't, the way he thought wasn't correct, but to get like a legal insanity situation, he had to basically be in a different reality, totally not understanding what was going on and that murdering this person was wrong. But he was still coherent in reality. Just because he thought murdering someone would be cool doesn't make him actually insane.
Yeah.
It makes him insane in the sense where I could be like, he's insane, but legally, no. Well, you were reading your half, but I didn't want to interrupt. How it said, the friend said that Bryan left dramatically once he got the call from his mom about the remains. I would love to hear that phone call of her calling her son and being like, hello? Why is there a head and hands in your closet? And what he had to say to that. Like,
There are a lot of clips online. Like I know you said you'll put some in, but if you really wanted to do a deep dive, like I've seen one where the police officer, like, so the mother obviously took the bag and she puts it in the sink of the kitchen, I guess, because it's probably a lot of leaking bodily fluids and things like that. And the police officer just goes over and he just looks and he's like, yeah, okay. Like you can just, I just can't even imagine walking into a scene like that as a mother, finding it in the cupboard, in the closet, and then the police having to deal with it. It's just so weird. And even like they're like, he's like, you got to cooperate. He's like, yeah, I'm going to cooperate. It's just wild. I can't even imagine just their thought process as this was all going down and having to deal with a situation like that.
Yeah, just imagine you're in your kid's room and you think maybe they're hiding like trash or something and just not being hygienic
Tidy.
or clean,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, surprise.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I do feel like, I know sometimes I feel like in these cases, I know his mother stuck up for him at the end and asked for mercy, but I also feel like she did try to get him help. She knew that, you know, even she said it was all stacked against him from the start. I do feel for her. You know, I obviously don't know the extent that she attempted to get him help. We know that she did to some point, but it would be a lot, and the fallout from this would be horrendous as well.
Yeah, I think it seems like she did the right thing. Obviously, a parent, you're still gonna love your kid no matter what for the most part, unless maybe they're like super, super awful. But she did the right thing. She called the police. She called them immediately upon finding it. I mean, I don't know.
Didn't give
Some
him a
parents
chance
might have
to
helped
get
cover
away
it
or
up.
something. Yeah.
Didn't pull laundries and give him one last vacation before turning him in. And
Yeah.
so definitely a sad story. Affected a lot of people. Brian's suck.
Yeah, I like when we post. I said that, you know, this is a double Brian episode, and then we were posting about all the Brians, and someone wrote, it's either a Brian or it's a river. Like that's who's getting people, a Brian
It's
or a
true.
river.
The Bryans and the Rivers. Someone's gonna get mad.
Well, we can't argue against the stats, can you?
True. And sure, I know there's some nice Bryans out there. Whatever. But that is it for this episode. We'll have a blog on it at truecrimesocietyblog.com, and follow us on Instagram, True Crime Society. It's where we always post updates the most, the latest things. It's the best place to follow us, I'd say. And if you want to follow our personal accounts, mine is StephSum_, Olivia's TCS Olivia. And you can check us out on Patreon, like we mentioned at the start of the episode. We always put the link in the episode description as well, but if you just search like Patreon True Crime Society, should come up. And like we said, we do bonus episodes every week, and we do all the episodes without ads, and we have some fun chats, and Patreon's kind of like its own social media platform too. More pictures of Peep and all her nonsense. And we like to talk in the chats too, so it's a fun spot. And then all the usual stuff: rate, review, subscribe, whatever. Rate on Spotify, leave comment. You can leave actual reviews on Apple, and share to your Instagram story. That's like a huge way to help us, because then people will see your story and maybe they'll want to check us out. So love when you guys do that. We always reshare. And that's it.
See you in
Wish
a few
Olivia
weeks.
a nice trip. Hope you get nice and tan in Hawaii. And that's it. Thanks for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. Peace out.
See ya.